been my great pleasure to play a small role in having this series become a part of our intellectual life at the university. And so, as has so often been my pleasure throughout the year of presenting these things, I will immediately hand things over to our provost, Margaret Everett, who will introduce our speaker.
Thank you so much, Jason. I can't believe this is our final Hidden Truths event for the year. It's been for me a real bright spot in what I know has been an unusual, challenging, sometimes sad, sometimes frustrating year, but gathering together, albeit remotely and via Zoom for these sessions has been really wonderful, and so grateful to all of you for joining us tonight. Because it is our last event, I really want to give some special recognition and thanks to our faculty leaders who brought all this together, especially Laura D'Amore, who I know has done the lion's share of the work. Yes, absolutely. Let's give some props to Laura for her work and her engagement, her participation, her vision for all of this. It's really been terrific and really has been very impactful. I want to thank Laura Turner as well, and Jason Jacobs, and all of the faculty from the Education Scholarship and Service Teaching Group that really came up with this wonderful idea and brought together this wonderful series this year. It's been a pleasure. And I'm really excited to introduce our final speaker in the series. I think we're in for a special treat, and it's been wonderful just chatting with her before we started tonight and hearing about her experience this year with our wonderful students. And it's just great to know that our students have had the pleasure of working with Cheryl Miller. Cheryl Miller is a designer, author, and theologian who is best known for her diversity, equity, and inclusion advocacy for Black graphic designers in the industry and marketplace. Miller holds a Master's of Science degree in Communication Design from Pratt Institute and received her BFA from the Maryland Institute of College and Art with foundation studies completed at the Rhode Island School of Design, that little school down the street from us. She also holds a Master's of Divinity degree from the Union Theological Seminary in New York City. An accomplished award-winning designer and businesswoman, Miller established one of the first Black women-owned design firms in New York City in 1984. Cheryl D. Miller Design Inc. serviced corporate communications to a Fortune 500 clientele, including BET, Chase, American Express, and Time Inc., Sports Illustrated. Social impact corporate communications defining, Sports Illustrated social impact corporate communications defining the civil rights era. Sorry about that. Miller's influential article, Black Designers Missing in Action, was published in 1987, followed by Embracing Cultural Diversity in Design in 1990, Black Designers Still Missing in Action in 2016, and Black Designers Forward in Action in 2020. She also wrote her memoir, Black Coral, A Daughter's Apology to Her Asian Island Mother in 2013. Her personal work and archives were acquired by Stanford University Libraries, the Cheryl D. Miller Collection at Stanford University. She is further curating with Stanford Libraries and design colleagues the history of Black graphic design in North American and open source database. What an incredible biography, Cheryl, and what a pleasure to have you with us tonight to close out our series. So I'll turn it over to you. And Thank you again for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me this evening. And more importantly, thank you for having me at Roger Williams all semester. It's really been really a blessing and a rare opportunity, through this time and season. And as I was sharing, I've been very fortunate. Our young scholars have been engaged with me. And if I am able to challenge their thinking and keeping them focused on their studies through this time, then I've done a good job. And with that, I'm going to share a sample of one of my lectures. I'm going to cite the problem. Really want to thank Professor Nikki for the invitation to teach graphic design in a new light, in a new lens, the history. I think what helped me to respond to the invitation, she says, Professor Miller, you have lived the history, and we want some of that eyewitness. And I have a little motto that's been saying, I'm old enough to have lived through it and young enough to still remember it. So with that, I thank everyone. I thank everybody at the university and this great opportunity to allow me to work out a discussion around the canon. And that's what I want to do tonight, is to show you some things. I learned a term in seminary that's been very unique. I went to Union Theological, and they do not necessarily pride themselves on making ministers. They pride themselves on making historians and scholars. And so this training, coupled along with my passion for design, brings me to an interesting spin on how I see history. And one of the things that I learned to do that I think is what makes my work interesting is that I present a synoptic view. And synoptic is different than parallel. They're entirely two different lenses. Synoptic really pushes us into critical thinking and looking at the same story from different lens. So in theology, when we learn synoptic, I'm not proselytizing, but this is synoptic, all right? You've got 4 gospels and you're seeing one story. We're seeing, let's just take, the Capitol insurrection. So we can see BBC, we can see Fox, we can see CNN, we can see NBC. We're looking at the same event, and the synoptic view is giving a real respect to each broadcast system. And that's, let me start us. That has been a problem in our industry, is that there hasn't been a synoptic view. Give it a minute. All right. All right, here we go. There hasn't been a synoptic perspective to the history of graphic design. And I think this is kind of, the challenge is going across a lot of disciplines. I don't say I know what else is going on with pedagogy and other disciplines. I really have, I would say, the good read, if you will, the pulse of our design community, the new map and geography of student. This class of 21, 22, 23 and following, they are made with a unique DNA and grit that is demanding us to grow as professionals. And one of the things that is just the advocacy to decolonize and decenter the whiteness in design history, there's just a move where, like it or not, we're having to deal with this. And this is a new opportunity to create new scholarship, new discussion, new history books, new performance. And that's what I'm encouraging the scholars who are with me through the week, that I want to show you synoptic views of this history. I believe in the canon of the graphic design history, but I want to show you some other things. And our assignments in the reflections weekly is to foster critical thinking. Like, well, what's your voice? What do you see? And my work is just an example of how to decolonize. So I would like to have us look at this lecture in a way of, okay, this is how I do it. I want to take you into the experience the same as in my class. Okay, you'll find my juxtaposition of the canon interesting. I don't require that they let me know that they were woke with true or false or comprehensive tests. I'll fill in the blank. I wrote this, I wrote the lectures, I know them very well. What I want is for them to grow in their thinking, and that what I've done is an example of what they can do as being young professionals being trained. So new design solutions, new scholarship, new books, new marketing campaigns. You are going to be the one, the new practitioners. So just use my content as an example of how to broaden the scope of whatever canon you will be, whether it's an ad agency, whether you're going, want to be a professor, you want to do PhD work, you know. This lecture is an example. Let's look at it as an example of how I've decolonized the basic, this is lecture on the Renaissance, okay, and graphic design history. So let's look at how I did it. You all probably know the history better than I do, but the point of my class is I want to empower your curiosity to make sure your voice can strap around any baseline, timeline, canon, because what's new is these other stories have to be told. So this move is about us, and I just happen to know where it is with design, but it is across academia and cross disciplines. Everybody is decolonizing. In graphic design, this is our basic problem. And this is a preface. Here is our problem. This is a current infographic that's appearing in my recent article with print that was published October 2020. This was done by a design scholar with AIGA out in Portland, and he was kind enough to analyze for me the 6th edition of Meg's The History of Graphic Design. This is our Bible. The problem with this book is it's in its 6th edition. It shows 594 designers it prints in this history and story. 62 are women. Brandon tells me that 80 are BIPOC, but that is the Asian community, and 3 are Blacks. So when we look at this, we have 449 white male designers that have monopolized the discussion of the history of graphic design. This Euro-Anglo white male perspective has had us brain locked, and this is our Bible. There are other versions, and I can't say they're much better. Hollis, Drucker, we've got a few other respected history books, but they all do the same thing. And this one is the leader of brain locking us, for giving us a brain freeze on the history of graphic design. This is a work, a directory that a gentleman, he's got a Pan-African community from Nigeria and Ghana, and he's working on documenting African descent designers just in a directory. These are North American favorites that lift up the primary Black designers basically from the Harlem Renaissance. But there's a broader network of this in directory all the way from Africans first landing at Williamsburg, and we're going to show you some of that. There are design practitioners that need to be integrated into the big story, and definitely now the cadre is fast moving, and that was a part of my reporting for October 2020. Black designers are no longer missing. Is European art the only art? No, demand Black art. All right, this is a part of looking at the problem. I've had, these are my vacation pictures, okay? And that picture is not a recent civil rights. That is out of antiquity. I found along the way in protests, that is European art the only art? No, demand Black art. These are, I've had the good fortune of my husband's in international business, and he usually goes out into the world and then comes back, and his best picks are where he comes and takes us for vacation pictures. And I have seen Black Jesus, and these are my vacation pictures. And I have traveled to Southern Italy, Greece, and most recently, the most Black and brown bronze images of Christ. I've traveled from Vienna to Montenegro, which would be all the area in Croatia. And the alleyways and the churches and the chapels, they depict Christ and the biblical stories in Black and bronze way before Jesus turns white with the Renaissance and ends up in Rome. So you know, you kind of have to work with that. Just plop these stories and these visuals on a timeline, and you can see Christ turn white with the Renaissance. Our books don't reflect all of that. And this is a little mime I have to chuckle at, when Jesus hid in Egypt. Because our Bibles, good old Jansen, everybody in art knows History of Art, okay, by Jansen, and of course our Megs, they will not show you these things. We're only going to pick up a white Anglo Christ, and we know that the church was the greatest audience of our early art. That was our client. B2B business, it was the church. I give you this preface so that you can just journey with my lecture. I just want us to journey with the lecture. I'm not here to give the lecture. I want you to journey with my cross-reference. This is a unique history timeline. It starts right here. So if you know anything about the canon of the history of graphic design and the era of the Renaissance, these books will take you right to 1450 to 1660. What's unique, when we parallel it or even do a synoptic, we are going to find that this is the same era, roundabout the sliding scale of the transatlantic slave trade. We can see that this history, if you study the canon, it's going to take you through the medieval manuscripts all the way down to early modernism and then postmodern. We're coming around that because we're ending the semester. We're finishing out modernism and juxtaposition of all of this. Each lecture does this, okay? And so if you know the canon, you know what week I'm in, and you know what's coming up. All right, so we want to start with this juxtaposition, and it's parallel, but it's also synoptic. All right, and what I'm studying and what I'm presenting is the history of the technology that's being developed in Europe across a lot of nations. And what's curious is that the same developers of technology, as we go through the story of the history of graphic design, guess what? They are colonizers. They're making graphic design technology, but they are also selling Africans. This is an era where in this lecture, we focus on, if you're familiar with the canon, all of this is familiar. We talk about the press, printing press, movable type, typecasting, copperplate engraving, woodcuts. So in this lecture, I have to give that canon. That's my responsibility. I know right here in this trajectory of time, these elements this technology was developed. It is my responsibility, okay, to teach the canon. But I got to, oh, by the way, and that's the decolonizing. The Atlantic slave trade, the transatlantic slave trade, or the Euro-American slave trade, you've got the Portuguese, the Brits, the Spaniards, the French, and the Danish are your main. Not only are they making typefaces and technology, they're stealing Africans and they're selling them. Okay, so there's a juxtaposition right there. They're making technology, and oh, by the way, one of their main businesses is selling Africans. And so that's the first, oh my gosh, pause, breathe, all right? And then we start beginning to see how the technology is used. And I show you, oh, by the way, look at this drawing of American Indian while exploring Spain's new American territory, 1520. So, like I said, I'm not going to give you the lecture, just enjoy the pictures, because the pictures are showing you where we all focus. Okay, I've gone to, you read the resume, all right? I've gone to 3 AK Naside schools. I know this history, and I know that in this lesson, in the canon, I am on Bible page after Bible page, illumination after illumination, specimen sheet, right? Over and over again, spacing and serifs. But oh, by the way, let me show you how it's being used. This is a 1594 wood engraving. Christopher Columbus arrives in America. These are your same practitioners now who are making technology. This is how they're using it. And that's the aha, oh my God, this is decolonizing. I'm telling the visual truth. I'm doing visual forensic work. This is how it's being used. So the books want to keep you right here, looking at the serifs and looking at the twirls and the space and the this and the that, and mostly Bible pages. And I'm like, oh, by the way, after we finish looking at the scriptures and this stuff, look at what you are communicating, your corporate communications of the era, selling your B2B business, selling Africans. This is a copper plate, 1650 engraving of the slave trade. Okay, and I'm just juxtaposing the canon. I have to do that, but a part of what I'm doing is showing you, look what the colonizers, your inventors, look what they're doing with it. Okay, so let's just enjoy it. We're moving into one of my favorite products. After Africans, the colonizers are selling tobacco. All right, so this is a 1660 tobacco label, mostly found in Virginia. Slaves were used for the colonial tobacco industry. So you begin to see the woodcut and the lithography, you see the technology, you see the typography. I don't have to give the lecture. All we have to do is just embrace what we're seeing. The colonizers who are featured in the Bible, and we're looking, in the Megs, our art Bible, if you will, we spill page after page. They forget to tell you that the B2B business is stealing and selling Africans. The branding, okay, the branding exhibits early usage of Renaissance graphic design technology across labels, cards, ads, cigar box tops, anything that has to do with the branding and selling of tobacco and Africans. These are our favorites. How you guys not gonna lecture Beatrice Ward, Claude Garamond? Of course, I'll let you know they're there. I'll give you a link, take you to YouTube University. We get a little bit, but I want you to also see that these colonizers, these Europeans, are using, I keep saying it over and over again, because these are the same folks. This is what they're doing. They're selling Africans, and now they're selling tobacco. I love this one. This is a 1670 wood block for planter William Gribble, and small labels were printed to hold the packages of shredded. These are labels that hold the shredded leaves. Okay, and so just look at the woodcut, look at the imagery. So this is an actual plate that was sold at auction. Believe it or not, I have a friend whose friend found this artifact, and yeah, no, it's not this one. There's one coming up. These are actual artifacts of the wood carvings, and we see this one is the I love the tobacco branding. This is a label. So we're looking at more woodcuts into the small labels which were printed, and the packages. These are specifically for the shredded tobacco. Bags, tops. This is 1700 labeling, ad cards. And while our classes all across our academia, we're focusing on style sheets. Week after week, we're looking at style sheets, okay? And week after week in my class, we're looking at style sheets and how it was used to sell Africans. This is a 1620 engraving. And I want to talk to you not only about the technology, I want to talk to you about the branding. So a lot of our design discussion in our VisCom 1, 2, and 3 classes, everybody's putting together their portfolio pieces. All the advisors say you got to have a branding project. Okay, so let's look at some branding. So once I kind of depict that this is how the technology is being used, let's look at some strategy. Okay, our strategy suggests that the products have origin in America and their relationship to one of the colonizers. Let's just pick on Britain a while. Okay, so your strategy is going to be made in America by one of the colonizers. Made in America, in this case, by London or Britain, you will see. Okay, and what you're gonna get in that branding, what's good branding without good imagery? So the slave, the native, the savage woodcut image, that's the made in America. That's the made in America part. You got to have a good little slave woodcut image. By Britain or any of the colonizers, you got to have a white master. So either a white master with a whip or a white master who's the captain or the captain of the boat. So this juxtaposition between the white patriarchal figure, either as the planter, the farmer with a whip, or he's the captain of the ship. Okay, that gives you coming in from Britain. The tobacco is made in America by the slaves, and that's your strategy. And the technology and the woodcuts, the typography, oh, by the way, with the Bible images, this is your branding strategy by the colonizers, European colonizers who are making the technology. Oh, by the way. So let's just enjoy some of it. You'll see it. Look at this one right here in the center. Made in Virginia by London. You got your white master, and then you got your good old savage captive slave. We're selling tobacco. Look at this. And it's the relationship, it's the strategy, not only the technology, but the strategy. This is branding. You got to have made in America by the colonizer. These are tobacco sleeves. So who's going to show you this but Miller? These are cigar bags, okay? And let's just drop this in, timeline. I'm sorry, but this is the truth. This is America. This is who we are. This is a colonizer's work. These are cigar bags, all right? And some of this imagery is from the Moors. It's not only, slaves in America, but, the Moors. And so they just use this imagery. And then, what's good old imagery if you don't have some indigenous, natives, Indians with tobacco? Oh, and let the technology change a little bit to color lithography, all right? And let's stretch it along some Jim Crow ads and cigar boxes. These are our revered design developers that we just absolutely adore. The 494, or whatever the figure was when I opened up, white men that we study. This is their handiwork also. So after we sell a little tobacco, why don't we just go ahead and sell a few slaves? No. Let's sell Africans and then we turn them into slaves. How about that? So you guys are better graphic design historians than I am, and What are we looking at? Caslon? What are we looking at? Baskerville? What are we looking at? Oh, we're looking at colonizers' typefaces and ornaments. And let's just sell some Africans while we're at making all this technology. Okay, so this is a handbill advertising a slave auction, 1769. This is the truth. Oh, well, we have a little trouble if they run away. So now we're going to sell them. And here's your advertising. Okay, in case they run away. We gotta make ads and posters for selling, and don't let them run away. Don't let them run away. Then we have to make ads. We're gonna look a little closer into that in a minute. Okay, so let's sell them and then let's make some ads. All right. Look at the technology. Okay, look at the letterpress. All these things that I have to teach. Here's the technology, and I'm just showing you, oh, by the way, the colonizers are selling Africans. The post office. I mean, what's the good old post office without a little imagery to help? Postcards. Okay, so these are Civil War postcards, and I just want you to see the juxtaposition of the technology. I'm teaching, this is my lesson for the Renaissance. And when we opened up, I told you, I've got to talk about the typefaces. I've got to talk about the woodcut. I got to talk about, lithography. I've got to talk about every lesson. I've got to talk about the Canon and what it's doing. But this is your post office. Okay. Oh, by the way, after we do Africans, and after we do tobacco, sugar, okay, come up from the Caribbean here. We gotta make sugar, we gotta make the syrup, we gotta make the rum, and we're gonna do the same thing. We're gonna show this relationship of branding. We've got American made by, I know where my family comes from, the Danish West Indies, it was sugar, okay? So, and the sugar turns to the syrup, and the syrup is used for the rum. And there we had the rum business. Okay. Then you see some ads for coffee. But your basic staples, Africans, tobacco, rum, coffee, your basic staples. And Caslon and Baskerville are your favorite typefaces of the era. And this is usually where you have to kind of sit for a minute like, Professor Miller, really? I'm like, yeah, really. Oh, and this is one of the favorites. Okay, these are little, look, I have props in my lectures. These are our New England primers. All right, and these are the pretty ones. These are the ones we get in our classes. Okay, so I'm talking a little technology, and this is an example, and we can feel my little artifacts. Yeah, and then the little books, I talk about the fact that they make little books for the kids to teach them about slavery. Oh yeah, but you can get your Sunday school lesson here too. There we are, moving along. I don't know how many times we have to look at the Book of Songs, but we surely do. Real Christian thing to do, and teaching the technology. And oh, by the way, let's talk about making money with it. So we teach the Canon. We're going along just fine. Oh, but let's make some slave posters, little letter form, wood type for slave posters. Like I said, you sell them, they run away, you got to capture them, you got auction, and really, it's interesting. That's the only thing. Listen, it's interesting. It's the truth. Valuable gang of young Negroes. Don't let them run away. We need slave catchers. And by the time, we get to talking about sans serif and, modernist, and, I do give you a little juxtaposition, and I show you some stuff from Emory Douglas, and let's look at his work and how he's just breaking every Swiss grid rule, every modernist rule. Using sans serif and imagery and type, and just, communicating the Black Panther movement. Very incredible artifacts. Yeah, the money, the coins. These are contracts. There are a lot of slave contracts and early church documents from the AME Church. A lot of technology used, and the pamphlets, the poems, the literature, and these contracts. They're contracts. I can't tell you all of what they're about, but it's definitely relation to slave ownership. Oh, this is one of my favorite subjects because my family is Danish West Indian. We're indigenous Danish Creole, mixed with the Ghanaian. We're derivative works of the Ghanaian slave trade with Denmark. I have a long story and recorded history, and that's a whole nother, oh my God, I'm the OG BIPOC mid-century. I have 4 grandparents, 4 different races, 4 different places, and it all really centers around the fact that I know out of all the slave trade, I know the Danish and Canadian slave trade, which is a part of my heritage, and I know the history. My friend just wrote this book. Denmark just released archives. They decided they were gonna recycle their history and reparations and kind of take ownership. Oh yeah, we sold Africans. we stole families and Africans from Ghana, and first stop was our Carnival cruise, St. John, St. Thomas, St. Croix. They finally taken ownership, all right? And they've, you gotta laugh at it, but because it's the truth. I can't sit here and, I don't make jests, but the irony of it, all right? So Denmark finally decides, okay, we're gonna give you all of your census records, everybody we recorded when we sold the islands to the United States, all the records, all of the slave ads. My friend is a St. Thomas U.S. Virgin Island historian. He got the slave ads from the Danish West Indian newspaper there, and he published this book. You can get this. He just documents slave trades out of the Danish Royal Danish Gazette newspaper, which documented the slave trade and news of the Danish West Indies. And I study the slave art, ads, and the imagery. And this is my friend's book. So after the slaves were sold, they began to run away. And so the history of this is really, really interesting. There are lots of books, lots of thesis documentation on analyzing the slave ads. I'm into the imagery of the slave ads. And my friend Rico just put this, these are the Danish West Indian slave. The Gazette newspapers had, they had a whole string of newspapers through the slave trade. And so the technology is beginning to publish ads and runaway ads. And the Royal Danish American Gazette began publishing in 1770. The Gazette newspapers were all over the slave trade. I just am an expert on the Danish Gazettes. The Gazette chain is very well documented, lots of thesis work. And they started originally without imagery. So when we study the type, you can look at the type here, and our cap initials and so forth. The runaway ad began to be published without imagery. So then we find that in the 1770s, the woodcut starts to get integrated into the making of the slave ads into the newspapers. But this is going across the transatlantic slave trade. I just focus on the Danish newspapers, but they're North American Gazette chains, the British chain, Gazette of Georgia, Maryland, wherever the slaves are coming in, Williamsburg, and the ornaments are traveling through a history of moving from woodcut into ornament catalog books. So if you're a designer, you know, back in the day, you could order these things in print catalogs. And so my work takes me into my next lecture, and my writings, who is running the presses behind the scenes. And so when I have one of my other lectures and my writing, I do point to a tremendous amount of scholarship. Even the website at Williamsburg, come visit the press, the enactment. The Slave Artisan is your original Black graphic designer who was behind the scenes, straight from Africa, making all of this imagery and ads and billiards and pamphlets for buying slaves, running away slaves. I got to get my slave back. And I love this poster from the Smithsonian. History is often painted prettier than it was. And so our books have painted this history very pretty. And I've come to tell you, let's look around a little bit further and see what our revered Euro-Anglo men were doing. And let's look a little bit about how they used their modern day technology of the Renaissance. And so this is an example of a decolonized lecture. And I encourage the students, this is my spin on it. And you've learned Black history on African-American history on top of the canon, but what's your story? What's your engage? So now I'm showing you two timelines. And so all of our reflections, our discussions is what do you bring? What do you see? What is your parallel story? What is your synoptic view? You know, we've been focusing on 1917, World War I, Art Nouveau into that era. It's like, okay, where was your family in 1917? What's going on? And so the lectures expose new dialogue on top of the canon. And it's amazing when you start looking, well, what was the woodcut doing besides the Bible pages? And that's what I challenge them each and every week. What else was being used? What else was being printed? This is corporate communication tools and technology of the era. You know, my world, it was used to sell Africans. In your world, what do you see? What can you research? What can you find? So we're doing critical engage, and those voices are celebrated. Whatever you find in your reflections in your right is just as valid as Meg's in his 6th edition and Miller in her 1st edition of Decolonized Graphic Design. And they, our students, are, I'm just having them to think. They're the next practitioners, they're the next publishers, they're the next branding experts. And I've come up with a new term. I keep coming up with new terms because, you know, there's new genre and it takes new vision. And so, you know, my lectures now, you should know, if you teach or know the history of graphic design, you know, I'm coming around into the international, you know, the semester's closing. I better hurry up and get to the Swiss. I better hurry up and now teach them this week, international design. We're closing out. But when I do that, I'm going to lift up, Miller's got a new genre, hybrid ethnographic designers. Be a designer in this day who is expertise in international and dares to be authentic to global visualization of imagery and iconography. So the community, the B2B community, the academia, we need to see these statements and visual stories from around the world, because when you look into your classroom and you look into your Zoom, they're coming in from all over the place. And it's no longer just Meg's graphic design. And that's my lecture, and I hope you enjoyed that. And that's how we do it. Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday at Roger Williams. And I've also had the great opportunity to teach this at University of Texas Austin Design. And my design classes, I am boldly, unapologetically making sure that my design scholars can do international design, command that Swiss, command all of that that has become the look of corporate America, but dare to say, I'm an ethnographic, where, you know, I got to be on a team. You don't know how to design for Latinx. You faux pas and mess up things for the Black community. You know, Twitter has a field day. So for me, the international and global designer has a future. So I'm talking up, you know, I'm talking up a new genre, hybrid ethnographic designers, those who can command international and be proficient in global, which is a new voice. This is how you design new space. And so thank you for welcoming me into your world and letting me bring new thoughts.
Thank you, Professor Miller. Appreciate the time you spent with us and appreciate the time you're spending with our students in our design classrooms. I know they're benefiting from it. I've heard directly. I'd like to say hello to everyone. My name is Nikki Ewan. I'm the Assistant Professor of Graphic Design here at Roger Williams University, and I'm moderating the Q&A. So if you have a question you'd love to put in the chat, or if you'd like to raise your hand, either is welcome. Great. So Cheryl, I see a question in the chat from Dean Cynthia Scheinberg. Coming from, she phrases it, coming from someone in a literary field who thinks obsessively about issues of canon, somewhat obsessively, just to play devil's advocate, but it's a genuine question for me. Your idea that we do need to teach the canon and the decolonized version synoptically, what would happen if we just taught the decolonized version, which would likely make reference to the canon without focusing on it or giving it that balanced treatment? So what would happen if you taught design history just focusing on Black designers?
No one would sign up.
Maybe you wouldn't tell them. You would just call it design history.
Well, that's what I'm doing, design history, okay? But it's juxtaposed the entire story. If I just call it Black history, who's gonna sign up? And it's the assignment. I'm trying to transform white folks thinking. I'm trying to transform white default. Do you want to segue us and segment us over again? Go, no, you all go over there. Nobody would sign up.
I think it's an incredible question, Dean Scheinberg. I really do. And I think I would love to live in the world where that would be okay, or that would happen. But for me, it feels a little bit like, and maybe Cheryl, this resonates with you. I have this here. I have props too, Professor Miller. So this is a box of crayons, Colors of the World crayons 24. And so for me, this is a bit problematic that it's a separate box of crayons. Why are these colors not included in a box of Crayolas that has 100 and some odd colors? I wonder if it feels like that at all, Cheryl.
Well, yeah, when you boutique it out, my whole thing is the whole history needs to be dealt with, okay? And I just use my point of departure for how to do it, all right? I'm encouraging, I mean, I can't do everybody. I can put in, you know, the Hispanic, and I'm Philippine American too. I'm real BIPOC, okay? And I was just studying, I was looking at the imagery from Philippine graphics. I mean, I could put in Pan-Asian graphics, you know, any one of us can do the work of this. The whole point is we're tired of just hearing about white men teaching us design. And so if I segment out a class and the requirement, okay, if you make it a requirement, how about that? If you make it a requirement, then you have to come and sit. But the requirement is the history of graphic design. Okay, it's not your your extra credit work. So if you make it a required class, then yeah, sure. But that's not the way it is. Not that last time I looked in everybody's catalog.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We have a question from Rachel McCormack. Rachel asked, during the beginnings of the Black Panther movement in Oakland, I learned that they had their own covert printing presses. Was this to be sure that the truth was being published and disseminated among the Black community there?
Oh, I can't answer the agenda with that, but I know a couple of things, probably cost, and the fact that they are printing controversial dialogue and political reporting and socio-political issues. They wanted no interruption. That's just plain and simple. You put a job in, you don't want it ruined, and you want anybody freedom of the press and also freedom of cost. So you take all of that and they're printing in the basement. I mean, I just was with Emory Douglas's lecture that he had, and he's fascinating, and his collection of his work takes him all over the world, and it's the story of the purpose of the graphics, and it's a broader story than the technology of the color. I can analyze technology. I can tell you all about Black printing. Okay, that's one of my other lectures. Black printing. Wait. I have all my props. Oh yeah, here you go. Oh, I give a whole lecture on Jet Magazine archives. Okay, we have our own typeface, we have our own palette, the layouts, there's an archive of them, and you can just see some incredible thought. And when I talk about one of the things that you just had to have been there, early printing, if you notice now, if you're following the young scholars on Instagram, everything has a black and gold color. All of the Black conferences and Black Ignite and this, that, and the other. You see this black and golden color repeatedly used. And there's a history. There's a history to African-American printing, mid-century. You didn't have any money. The only thing you got was black. So goldenrod as paper became your second color. And so that DNA, that visual DNA repeats itself. And now I see Instagram and I have to chuckle. The kids love using black and gold, and they're completely, it just has morphed and transformed. But there's a history of black and gold in the African-American community. It was a way to cut and get a 2-color job out of just, listen, church covers, brochures, pamphlets, everything. Black with goldenrod gave you a 2-color job. Okay, but they don't know that. I know that because if I've seen one Negro magazine and pamphlet from back in the day and cutting costs, it's like I've seen a dozen, black and goldenrod. And I chuckle, I see it, and I said, the scholars don't even know that there's a visual DNA and a history of this. They just naturally, because they grew up with the pamphlets and things in their house, their homes, on their living room tables, and the kitchen table, and the church. Okay, this imagery is repeating itself, and it's coming into new day visual discussion. And unless I give a lecture and pull out all the Jet magazines and show you the black and goldenrod and the paper and the stock, and then all of a sudden everybody has an aha, oh my goodness. The church anniversary books were done every year with black and goldenrod because goldenrod gave you your second color of yellow. Listen, we have a visual genealogy and DNA, our community. And so there are little things like that in my lectures and my discussions. You just follow me, follow my zingers on LinkedIn and Instagram. Every day I've got some truthful zinger. And everybody's like, oh my gosh, she's disrespectful. I mean, no, I'm just telling the truth. And so I'll give you an example of my Sunday zinger, Easter. And I don't know, I was just I enjoyed so much Lifetime's version of Mahalia, and about the gospel singer Mahalia Jackson. And I think I gave respect to Easter. I'm not sure if I posted it Easter night or Easter Monday morning. One of my favorite subjects is that Milton Glaser got all the Black work, and the Black designers in New York City of the era didn't get any. And so Easter Sunday Mahalia concert at Lincoln Center, Glaser got the work. And that's one of the ones I'm like, really? We couldn't find a Black designer to give a little piece of Lincoln Center work. We had to get, Milton Glaser gets everything. He had to do Mahalia Jackson. Come on. So I say these things and I make folks think, well, if you think about it with me, you know, I'm telling you the truth. And so, hey, I like Professor Nikki says, Cheryl, you live the history. And my favorite motto is, yeah, I've been through it. Old enough to have gone through it and young enough to remember it. And I still, listen, I don't drink or smoke, a couple of espressos. It all comes back just like it was yesterday.
I have a question for you, Cheryl.
Mm-hmm.
So my question is, you called or framed the typefaces Baskerville and Caslon as colonizers' typefaces, right? Or in part as parts of colonizers' graphic design. And so I'm wondering, these are fairly common typefaces that young type students work with, they're shown to work with. What would you say to students about picking typefaces as they're starting to learn that process?
Well, you know, I think it's really important because as I'm going through the lectures now at Bauhaus, and, you know, the pushback of not using the Nazi German typeface and then taking off the serifs and coming up with avant-garde. And I think that I just saw an article about a racist type font. I think you have to be aware of it. And I think that when we do our mural board research, that you got to dig deep if you want to have a value system in this and a code of ethics. One of my lectures, I feature, there's a treatise, a CNN, there's a report where there's been some forensic work done on the logos for everyone that, those who are part of the Capitol insurrection. And so that's a part of my symbol lecture, is that discussion about being responsible. And it's up to us. I don't know of a design ethics class, but I do lift up the importance that we are given very powerful tools and that we should be responsible and ask questions before we make design decisions. And so that's really important for me. And one of the things that we recently have analyzed in one of the classes, and you can find it online, the forensic work where they pull out the patches, they can tell the organizations, and a lot of that, the German, I can't call it right now without my notes, the German typeface.
Black letter? Black letter?
Yeah. The labelings are telling, you know, are telling which ones are white supremacists and so forth. And so when I have that discussion, I do point out that our skill and what we're learning is a very powerful tool. But I don't know design ethics. I just lift up to find a way to do your research, to be responsible to your ethics and to your value when you do design. Be very conscious that these are very powerful tools and instruments. So the answer to your question, I try to inspire us to do our work to make sure that we're sending the correct message. And so with typeface, you really do, besides making pretty, that's your mural board, yellow sticky. Do some research. If you really care. If you really care, you will. Mm-hmm. If you're responsible code of ethics. I don't know any class like that, but I do integrate it. And most recently, we've studied these forensic reports on the labels and the logos of the insurrection. the cameras have zoomed in on the t-shirts, and they can tell you exactly what you're thinking, who you're with. And we are practitioners, and we're stewards of very, very powerful technology. Now that, it's just no longer a wooden T-square. Okay, it's speedball pins, all right? So have responsibility and do the work with that. I try to inspire that you do your value-based code of ethics work. Be conscious and know what you're doing.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for my students on the call and who'll be listening later. Thank you for reiterating that research is the sort of, it's not about having the answer or knowing exactly where to go, but about researching what you're representing when you make these choices. Thank you. Elaine Furlick, I love your comment. Would you care to, oh, you're not done? Okay, you're not done. Okay, she's still writing. I want to see what the rest of it's going to be. So Elaine starts by saying much of modern design work is focused on digital displays. So now we have a cliffhanger as we wait for the rest of you. And Elaine, you're welcome to unmute and ask your question too. Please, you're welcome to.
All right, that's good. I love how I have a cliffhanger. So as the technology changes to this much more digital focus, lots of the things that we used for a long time are being redesigned. Fonts are redesigned to be used on digital displays. The kind of icons, imagery is recreated. We have so much that's new, but a lot of it is derivative, like it's based on an older form. So Cheryl, what do you think? Like, what do you think about what's happening there, and how does that, are we moving away from colonialism, or are we digging ourselves deeper?
I think I have a couple of concerns. All right. One, I am seeing a new socio-political design statement being birthed in our scholars. I am concerned that they are so bold and authentic. I don't know where they're going to go as practitioners. So the digital is being matched with up in your face content that unapologetically the kids are telling visual truth that we don't want to look at. And where they are, craftsmanship is excellent. The content will, oh my God. And so these portfolios, class of 2021, I see them, and they are telling visual stories. They are storytellers of who we are as a society. And my concern is, oh my goodness, where's all of this ethnographic design going? And look past the content and see the execution of craftsmanship and technology is advanced and sophisticated, but look at the truth of the visual imagery that's being, the story that's the young designers are telling us of ourselves. So the answer to your question is, I'm worried about the content. It's so truthful and so up in our faces that what are we going to do with these unapologetic practitioners who are loaded with technology, and they're not telling our stories, sugarcoating them. They're telling the story raw. And I'm like, okay, whose editorial is going to pick this? What magazine's going to pick this kid up? And I see this. I'm in 4 universities, and everybody wants me to look at portfolios. And that's why I said, Cheryl, hybrid ethnographic designer, come up with something, come up with a genre for this, because they're trained well, but they're telling our real raw story. They're giving us a reflection of ourselves. And I find that gripping. They're telling truthful stories that aren't pretty. And the craftsmanship and the technology is in excellence. So what do you do with that? What do you do with that? I don't have the answer. I'll just tell you that that's, I seem to be a futurist. So what I'm sharing with you is that I think designers are being trained to tell new messages in new ways. And we have to be prepared for the story the young scholars tell us. They're showing us ourselves. And sometimes that's not pretty.
So Cheryl, I'm enthralled by this thought. There's a follow-up in the chat. What do you mean they're not telling this? What do you mean they're telling the story wrong? If the story is so truthful and authentic.
I don't mean wrong. If I said that, that's not what I mean. What I'm saying is they're telling a truthful and authentic story. Okay. Yep. And there's no, yeah, I said wrong. I didn't say wrong. Wrong. And it's the truth.
Got it. Got it. Understood. I heard wrong too. So yeah, thank you for clearing that up.
Wrong. RAW. And it's the raw truth. And I have to admit, I'm kind of helping them make pretty. It's like, if you're gonna do that, could you just move over to the grid a little bit? I'm like, okay, no problem. This is wonderful. And I'm like, if you're gonna do this and shock me, then just move it, just square it up a little bit. Don't make it look like half grid, half not. Just, you're so close, just can skew it to the left a little, just tighten it up a little bit. Really, no. So no, there's nothing wrong about it. It's raw and it's truthful. RAW, quote me accurately. And I'm with them. And what I'm sharing with you, I just talked to George and I said, George, what should we be looking at this? Because I'm across 4 universities and I'm seeing, and I'm all, all the young, I think everyone relates to me because I'm kind of user friendly and I look like everybody's aunt. I'm in America now. I'm in everybody's aunt, everybody's auntie, tia, and auntie, And so, if you see me on Instagram or LinkedIn, Ms. Miller, can you look? And I'm like, sure, I'll look. And so I had a little conversation with George and I said, George, are you seeing this with me? And he says, yeah. And there's a new move and there's a new press with design studios and advertising. And, they are telling the story. And as long as the technology and they're skilled and the craftsmanship, craftswomanship, personship is in excellence and backed with all of our degrees from ACAD, NASAD, and every design university acclaimed. If they know what they're doing, they are leaders in a future, in something future that we've got to deal with. And so he's like, send them on, Cheryl. I'll look at the portfolio, because I'm like, he's got running an acclaimed studio, and I'm like, George, what do we do? He says, send them in for a review. So we've got to get with this. This is real. And now, please understand, Miller is with them. Like I said, just square it up. make pretty. I tell your story. Just make pretty for me, okay? Just I'm on.
Use that Swiss chocolate grid.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And but what it is so global. The kids, they're coming in with all of this DNA from around the world, and who are we? Who are we to squeeze and squoze them, into one venue? That's not the world. We have to change. We have to grow, and if it's done in excellence, listen, they are our practitioners. We're becoming old school if we don't keep up. And this is true. And a part of that's a whole nother discussion on diversity and inclusion in our classroom, in our studios, in our performance. Okay. I didn't have an opportunity to be loved and accepted in design school. That's not the way it was for me. And I'm living to see that maybe there's something left in relationship where I'm experiencing the acceptance now. So did it take a lifetime for Cheryl Miller? Yeah. Yeah, and history repeats itself in 50-year cycles. I've been at this 50 years. What can I say? I stepped on the path of a very white supremacist, racist, systematic racist practice when I was 17 years old, and I've been running for my life ever since. It's not much about this. The way we quit, the way that we look, the way we look at projects we don't understand.
That's
We
right.
don't we don't understand the projects. We don't understand the content. I mean, let's be real. How many hair projects have we seen? Okay, and then professors don't know what to do but say, "Oh, that's awesome." That's awesome. You know, and I'm like, I gotta get, I'll be honest. I see them across the platform. Hair projects. Okay. Self-esteem, understanding your hair. All right. And I must be the professor that's vogue with that because I got BIPOC hair. You know, it can be curly, it can be pulled back, it can be, today I got it blown because I'm on Zoom all day long, you know, and you guys will see a project like that and go, awesome, cool, or skip over it, or won't say anything. You don't know what to do with the tension visually that you see. You know, I come into a class and I'm like, oh yeah, I got that here. You know, I got curl number 2B. What do I do? You know, and I'm like right there, and they're like, Professor Miller knows? Yeah, Professor Miller knows. Look at all these people. See all these people? They're all in my head. So, you know, we have to do this together, and that's usually where I'm ending all of my lectures. We're learning from each other, and we've got to grow for the sake of the young scholars, and let everybody have a voice. As long as we're working together and they're performing, then who are we? Who are we? And in leadership, we have a responsibility to grow and get with this, or we will be minus PMS 354. And that's I got to find my hex colors for that. But old school, you ought to know what 354 is. Okay, we'll be minus it if we don't get with it. Okay, so I just send everybody to Google. I've always loved that. What did she say? PMS 354? Yes, we will be minus. We'll be short of PMS 354. And what is that? Green. Okay, there'll be no admissions. There'll be no tuition. There'll be no clients. Okay, if we don't diversify our thinking first, it starts here. And if we don't look to grow and be with each other and open up the seat to this table. And I'll tell you, scholars 21, 22, 23, graduates 24, they're not tolerating us, not getting along in the design industry. They have takedown missions on Instagram. Not good. Not good.
Wielding their power.
Yes. And so I just encourage us to glean from each other, and let's work this out. And a part of it is our graphic design history has to tell some more stories.
Yeah.
It has to.
Yep. Our studio classrooms need to change. Agree. Professor Miller, I can't thank you enough for your time tonight. I can't thank you for everything. Can't thank you enough for everything you've brought to Roger Williams and shared through your work, through your practice of living the last 50 years of graphic design. And we are so thankful for your time. And maybe if the people on the call still have a little bit of energy, if we could unmute and just give Cheryl a little round of applause, and then we'll say goodnight for the evening. Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you. And I invite you. Thank you so much. This is what we do. The kids teach me this. You can find me on LinkedIn, and you can find me on Instagram, and watch for my zingers. I got a great one running right now. Oh my gosh. But no, I don't want to start again. I got a real good zinger out there right now, the last 2 days. So you just have to follow me on LinkedIn and follow me on Instagram. And I'm always putting up new truthful history notes. I want to shout out, I'm Friday, I'm with the Black in Design, sponsored by IBM with Texas State. And I'm with you.
Thank you.